Let me do a clap because not this time we're gonna get it. Welcome to another episode of Around the Block Talk. I'm your host, Los. Today we have the honor of having Bobby LeFebre, who is a writer, performer, and cultural worker here in Denver, Colorado. Thank you for joining us today, man.
Thanks for the invitation,
I appreciate you coming through, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
So you are a multi-talented, multi-disciplined artist here in Denver, Colorado. You are also recognized on a national level as well. How did you get started?
You know, I got started early on as an actor. Acting was sort of the first art form that I studied and went with. Found poetry. That morphed into a combination of both, some community work. And so I really try to merge all of those things in what I do.
Wow, and that's been a lengthy history. You know, you kind of evolved. Did you have everything that you do now? Like, what is the type of work that you're doing right now? Like, what kind of projects are you working on now? You
know, a little bit of everything. So those three things that you mentioned, writer, performer, and cultural worker, those are sort of the buckets that I keep my creative work in. So as a writer, I'm a poet, I'm a playwright, and right now I'm working on a web series, sort of a short form web TV type show called Welcome to the North Side. So as a writer, I do those things. As a performer, I'm an actor, I'm a performance poet, performance artist, and as a cultural worker, I really use art as a tool for provocation and social dialogue, critique, and change. So those things sort of merge together to form my creative professional identity.
Wow, and how long has that taken you to actually develop all those three facets?
Long time, man. I've been doing this work for a long time. So you know, from the time that I was 15, I'm 35 now. So I've been doing creative work, community work since my mid-teens.
For 2 decades. Wow, that's a long history. A lot of people don't even have that long of a career yet.
That's true. Yeah.
That's pretty great. So today, we're going to be talking about. This is going to be a great episode because you're going to be breaking down some knowledge for a good sector of the U.S. that are freelancers, consultants, and independent artists. I know that you came out as an independent artist, but you've also been hired to do a lot of different projects. You've been hired by universities, businesses, the government to do pieces for them, whether it's writing, performance, or whatnot.
Yeah.
You've been on TEDx as well, and that's amazing thing to have on your resume, in terms of experience and what you've done in your past. So I think today is going to be really powerful because you're really going to break it down for people who may not have a full-on business or have several employees, but also are independent. They may be working in where they're going in and working with different businesses or different individuals, or an artist who's trying to get commissioned, right?
Sure.
So that's really a freelance kind of area, if you will, and also like a consultant because you get advice for your expertise as a cultural expert. So today we have 3 points that you're going to break down for us, right? What are those 3 points, and then we'll go into each one individually.
Yeah. So the first point really is really being able to define yourself. The second point that I'm going to touch on is creating community around your work, and then the last one is really about consistency and longevity. Once you do the work for a while, you have to maintain it at a certain level, and you want to always look forward to how to grow in the future. So those are the 3 things that I guess we'll talk on today.
Okay, awesome. And just a little backstory, Bobby is really natural at promoting himself, connecting with people, really leveraging his network. We had this little discussion about he's not a full-on marketer per se as a professional marketer, but he uses a lot of techniques that he's grown into, learned on his own over the years that really do work. And now we're kind of sort of categorizing them probably for the first time for you, in that sense. So the first point is, defining yourself. Why is that important first? And that goes for any business, but especially for freelancers and consultants and artists who can be seen as sort of like a general term and not very specific. Why is it so important to define yourself?
There's a lot of competition, and really being able to draw from your strengths as an artist, as a community member, and really being able to have a confidence in your work. Once you have a strong confidence in what you're doing, you're then able to take that confidence and those things that you've learned into really creating a persona that you use as an artist.
Yep.
That is recognizable. You know, you wanna be able to stand out and be recognizable for your work, and that's really rooted in a really confident place of where you come from. You have to really put work in to get to a place where you're comfortable with who you are, and really the defining yourself is really just an expansion of those things that you already are, that you're already doing. The work that you're doing, you want to just really be able to shine a spotlight on that in a way that resonates with people. And by creating that identity, I guess the term is branding. You're branding yourself and your work in a way that is attractive to people, and that's part of that identity building.
And that's a very key component, because you actually have artistic talents in multiple different facets. Did you start out that way, or did you first define yourself in one type of art, one type of medium, and then expand? How did that work for you?
Yeah. I think one thing that's good about creatives these days, and even just professionals, is we don't necessarily have to be siloed into, oh, this is what I do, right? We can do multiple things, but if you do decide to do multiple things, you have to also dedicate time and energy to make sure that you're really developing in those areas, and that you begin to see the places that they intersect and overlap. So like I said, I started as a performer. The first time that I ever explored anything artistic was as an actor. In 8th grade, Mrs. Allen, if you're out there, she brought me into a creative project and put me on stage for the first time, and I had found that was an amazing way that I was able to express myself. I got into poetry through attending an event here locally called Cafe Nuba. It's hot and it's black, for those people who remember Cafe Nuba.
Yeah, Cafe Nuba.
I went to a poetry reading at the Gemini Tea Emporium in 5 Points, and it was the first time that I had seen performance poetry. So these people on stage doing this thing that was poetry, but it was also performative. And I'd always been a writer. I'd kept a journal and things like that, and then I saw these people performing poetry, which reminded me of actors' monologues, and I immediately fell in love with it. I started writing, and then I started not only writing for my own sort of release and in my journal, but I started to write to perform. So I was writing things that were very personal, very social, and then found an outlet to perform this, and then you develop skills, you build new networks, and then before you know that, it sort of avalanches into new things. And so just following the energy about how those things come to be has been something that I've really been in tune with, is how I follow that creative energy and meet new people, build on opportunities, and so that's sort of morphed into the dimensional creative persona that I have and that I've created for myself.
And that's really important. What you pointed out is that if you really are going to expect to make a living off of your art, or if you're a freelancer or a consultant, you really have to make sure that you put in quality time and effort so you get quality results. No one's gonna hire a sort of okay artist, you know what I mean? You probably get a lot of free invitations to do volunteer work, but in terms of really expecting to be paid for it, you really have to become a master of your art, right? So you can
Absolutely,
do that.
yeah. I mean, spending time, mastering your craft, figuring out, how to study, how to read up, how to research. That's all really, really important in defining yourself. You have to know the traditions of what you're coming from in order to do something new, and really, once you develop that, you're actually responsible for helping create the market too. So once you've been doing the poetry for a while, you've been doing the acting for a while, then you start to figure out, how you can turn that into something new. So that for me led into things like talent agents who helped me, find work as an actor. It led to me pursuing performance poetry on levels at the college and university circuit, which required an agent. And then you start, bringing in money from your work, and you turn this passion into something that's generating, real income, which is really, really an interesting facet of it as well, because, obviously the foundation of art needs to be genuine, it needs to come from a place of need and desire, but when you begin to monetize that, it's interesting because you have these different forces that are you know, telling you that they want you to do certain things, and you have to pick and choose what you're willing to and to not do in that. So it's a really, really interesting game.
Yeah, it is, and I love how you described it in terms of like your evolution, you know, and it does happen by taking solid steps in every facet. Now, you know, you may not know exactly every decision you're gonna make. Most people don't. They go as they are figuring it out, but you have to have some foundations, and this goes for all artists. If you're a musician, a painter, a writer, an actor, if you're a freelancer or a consultant, is the same thing for you. You have to all figure out what you're going to be offering. Obviously, it's a no-brainer if you're going to open up a gym. If it's a no-brainer if you're going to open up a certain type of restaurant. But when it comes to these hybrid kind of careers that really are some of the more exciting careers out there,
for sure.
You know, you really have to have that foundation and really create quality. That leads us to the next component. After you've really developed yourself, after you've mastered your artistry, your skill set, how important and why do you need to create some sort of community behind that?
You know, art by nature is a social act, you know, so a lot of artists are, you know, esoteric introverts, right? That, you know, we sort of romanticize the idea of what it means to be an artist.
Yeah.
You know, we think that writers, you know, sit around in berets and, you know, in that, you know, visual artists are these, you know, really esoteric people.
They're not.
You know, they are. We are. We're guilty of all that stuff, I guess. But I believe that the nature of art is social. You know,
Yeah.
we create art to communicate. We create writing to convey personal messages that other people have gone through or been through that resonate with people. We create visual art to document a certain experience and existence that we all share together. So engaging with community in a genuine way is something that I really try to do. And I found I've never really went out searching to create a market for myself.
Yeah.
I've done what I do in the way that I do it and the way I want to do it, and it's drawn people in a really organic way. So I've built relationships with people in community through, I guess, networking, but networking really sounds like a businessy, you know, tool, whereas I really just attempt to have genuine conversations with people around what I'm doing, around what they're doing, and things happen organically, you know, and so creating that community, that network of other artists and professionals and community is really, really important to me. And so I think that's a foundational element of my work, which really focuses on using art and writing and performance and community work to really connect us across the things that would otherwise divide us. So
well, I like what you said in terms of how you created that community. What were some of the techniques, or in which way did you engage people, though? I mean, you're creating your art, you've got it down, but how did you actually engage people to grow that community?
You know, I think as a performer, it's sort of, you have a leg in already when you're in front of people and you're performing something, or you're you know, reading poetry, or you're by nature of being in front of people, you have the gift and responsibility of having people listen to you. And so after you have people listen to you, you talk with them about, you know, hey, how did you like that? They engage with you. It's a conversation. So art that is not a two-way conversation is boring. You know, if you're always just, you know, presenting and never receiving information back, I think you're doing it wrong. And so actively seeking out spaces in which art creates dialogue, creating environments where people feel like they can talk to you and not just hear from you, has been really, really important. And that's the relationship building that I found is really important, is this way of not only presenting something to someone, but also learning from them, and then, you know, relationships just sort of tend to form in those ways.
How about when that's the in-person component, right? And it's all networking. I mean, networking can be you walk down the street, you meet somebody, and then you can network there in that moment.
Sure.
But let's say when you're not in person, when you don't have that captive audience, what other ways have you been able to reach out to people? Let's say online. Like, what do you do online?
So I think artists need to be really, really in tune with what the newest ways of communication are. So obviously I utilize social media quite a bit to engage with people. You know, social media is interesting in that you are able to build an online persona. You're able to share with people what you want to share with them. You're able to curate a certain image, or you're able to curate the way that you wish to be perceived, which is an interesting thing, good and bad, because you know, you can tell the world you're this person or this thing, but if your work doesn't really back that up, people are going to find out about it. Like you're going to be, it's whack when people are, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, and then they don't deliver with the work. And that goes back to really creating a product that you're proud of. So anything that I do, I want it to be the best that I can. And so utilizing social media, having that consistency and creating a community around that is really, really important. Finding followers, finding entry points to have you know, conversations with people online, pushing my work out in a way that feels good to me, you know, that feels organic to me, that feels, you know, not contrived is something I look for. So, you know, the way I message things, the way I talk about what I'm doing, usually comes from a first-person narrative. You know, I'm telling people, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm interested in this. I'm excited about this, and I want you to be too. So engaging with people in that way through social media has been really, really important. Having that presence is huge. You know, having social media presence is huge.
Super killer.
Utilizing hashtags and you know, doing what all the kids are doing these days, you know, learning the new technology, website and branding, and you know, creating a physical image too, you know, having good headshots and you know, having all of those tools to really convey the message that you're trying to convey to people.
And I like what you're talking about, because you're always constantly, as an artist, the beautiful space that you live in is that when you make content, you're striving for making original content, right? And then that goes into, especially in social media and online, is virality, right? When you create something that goes viral, how important is that to always be thinking about creating something original that can pick up that sort of traction online?
I think that the good thing and the bad thing about online, you know, marketing or online engagement is it's created a way for something that otherwise would not have been seen by millions of people or whatever. So when something goes viral, it's amazing to see how people have taken to something. But it's also created the need to be more original, because the internet and social media is so oversaturated with messaging and videos, and you know, you really have to try to do something new and fresh and engage people in a way that they haven't been engaged before, or to take you know, a risk with doing something new. So that's the blessing and the curse of social media, is it's flooded with things, and you have to try to figure out where you fit in that whole world.
And that's a good thing though. Don't look at that as a negative. Look at that as sharpening your skill. You know, steel sharpens steel. And when you begin to get out there, especially being an artist, but let's not forget freelancers and consultants, you have to be different. You can't be cookie cutter like everyone else. If you want to be on social media just for fun, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to really express yourself, get yourself known, and really get traction, think of making original content. And that's one of the things, the themes that we always go over with the clients that I work with through Blu Bambu, is that what are you doing that's original? Don't cookie cutter someone else. You know, I would hate for someone to watch this show and think about copying someone that's on the show or identical to, let's say, your style or whatnot. You need to find your own voice and make it a very good voice if you're going to be marketing it and getting it out online.
It might be like mad cliche or whatever, but you know, originality is really what sets us apart from each other, right? So like getting back to a space where you're being more of who you really are, that's what's interesting to people. People don't want to see the same thing over and over again. They want to know you as a person, as an artist, as a creative, and you know, the more original you can be with yourself, the more that you can tell your personal, you know, small circle story, the more it's really going to resonate with people. And so there's a lot of copycats out there. There's a lot of biters. There's a lot of people that are interested in trying to reproduce things. And while I actually believe that you should borrow from, you know, people that you know, really appreciate that you admire. Look at other people's hustles, you know, like look at people that you aspire to be like. Look at how they hustle. How do they market themselves? What social media sites do they use? What works for other people? So that's something that in the conversation I think is really important. When you find someone who you really aspire to be like, you know, take a look at how they're utilizing social media and messaging and things like that, because that'll help you build upon your own originality. You know, you don't want to bite, but you definitely want to borrow.
Yeah, and that's reverse engineering. What Bobby's talking about is looking at what other people are doing and figuring out how they did it. What are the components that work? And we do that all the time. And anything that you want to do in terms of like getting your voice out, you want to see, like Bobby said, is you want to stay up to date with technology and new techniques and approaches. That means you need to look at it and reverse engineering. Car companies, technology companies, all kinds of businesses and entities have done that throughout history. They look at something and reverse engineering. And that goes into part of having a strategy. You know, you've built, although it's been like a naturally built strategy for you because the way you've just moved up and down with your history, in your experience, you have developed some sort of strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's unique, I don't know if it's unique, but how I operate is I have these very two distinct sides of me. So I'm mad creative and crazy, you know, can be esoteric in that traditional artist when I'm creating and when I'm busy being creative. But I also have this very practical side that allows the business aspect to kick in, and I'm very organized. And I think artists, you know, they get a bad rap because they're not very good business people. They don't call people back. If they do, it's late. They don't return emails. And I have a very a fire that keeps me really well organized, and that basic communication with clients or with whoever it may be that's relying on you to communicate to get work done. I can do that while at the same time being very creative, so the work still happens, but the opportunities also are able to be manifested because there's a split that happens there between the creative and the business side. So my strategy has really been you know, being really engaged in the creative work and creating, but also being able to turn that into something more organized and professional to be able to present that in a way that is appealing to people.
And that's super important, because if you're going to be an independent artist, a freelancer or consultant, many businesses that come to you either are coming to you because they want originality, or they know that they're going to have a very personable and personal relationship with you. Otherwise, they would go to these big entities, they would go find someone else to fill the shoes. But when you do get that assignment, when you do get commissioned to do some work, call them back, be on point, be organized. People have expectations that you need to manage, and if you don't manage those expectations, you will definitely lose out on opportunity. And that goes for any business, but in particular freelancers, independent artists, and consultants, because these individuals is where I hear a lot that people don't get called back, people didn't send the proposal, they didn't sign the contract, and it's little things like that that if you're really trying to actually make a living for yourself, if you plan to have a family, if you plan to have a future, you need to be really well organized, and all of that is part of your strategy.
Well, and I think it's also okay to have different professional identities, you know, so you're going to interact, like I interact differently when I'm strictly creating something out of need and desire. When I'm commissioned to do something, my professional persona is different in that arena because I know I'm being hired to deliver a product. And while I'm true to the artistic process, I know that I'm also creating something for someone else.
Yes.
So being able to code switch between, you know, creating art for personal use, creating art for community use, creating art for commercial use, it requires a different, you know, personality and code switching between those things. And again, there's always intersection between them. They can live together.
Yes.
But knowing how to communicate and knowing how to really leverage those different needs is really important, and it's there's nothing bad about that.
No,
like
not at all.
I can be, you know, the person who creates art for the sake of creating art. I can be someone who's hired to write a script for a company, and you know, those things can coexist.
Yeah, and they need to coexist in today's world because things are there's not a defined line anywhere. And having that said, that leads us into, you're going to put all this work Now you have to be consistent.
Right.
What is the most important reason why to be consistent?
Consistency really breeds a sense of longevity. You know, when you're consistent, when you're constantly producing at a certain level, it builds trust. People have trust in you. They have trust in not only your work products, but they have trust in you as a person. When you commit to the things that you say you're going to do, it builds character, and that professional character is something that you can't buy. You can't buy the simple things. You can't buy loyalty, and you can't buy sincerity, and all of these things live, you know, together, you know. And so that's something that I think is really, really important, is creating that quality that people can rely on and also appreciate you for.
So consistency is the thing that keeps you in the game for a long time. If you don't have consistency, you're going to be like those cats that are the one-hit wonders. What are some of the key components or ways that you stay consistent?
You know, you have to continue creating. You have to always be busy, and sometimes being busy doesn't necessarily mean that you're being productive. So you have to be able to also manage the two. You always have to be growing and learning and being humble about sometimes you fail. Sometimes you make something or you create something that people aren't going to resonate with, or that you're not going to resonate with, and you have to be okay letting those things go. But moving along and challenging yourself is really, really important. Trying new things, not getting stagnant is really, really important, and continuing to meet people, continuing to build with people to you know, make new connections and build new communities, and really doing things that matter. You know, I think a lot of people get burned out because they're either trying to create something for someone else, or they get too wrapped up in the commercial aspect of creating art and culture, and it becomes more of a job than it does you know, just coming from a genuine place of needing to create and saying yes and no. Being able to say yes to people and being able to say no to people is really important too. Like, you know, I'll get approached by a nonprofit who doesn't have a budget, but I really believe in what they're doing, and I'll work for free. Or I'll get approached by a corporation who has a lot of money, who wants to pay me what I don't think is a fair wage, and I say no. So being able to say yes and no is a privilege, but you should be able to be comfortable with what your price points are, what you're willing to and to not do, and that also helps create longevity because it builds trust, and it also builds professional character.
So you develop yourself, you created this consistency, but how important is it to keep that dialogue going with sharing updates, with having good quality content, and using social media? Why is that important to keep in contact with people?
It's just really important to show people that you're still busy, that you're still moving, that you're still working. Once you've built that reputation of someone who does good quality work, who cares about, you know, what they're doing, people tend to be drawn to that. And so it's important to be repetitive with what you're doing, to keep being in the public eye, to show people exactly, you know, what you're doing and when you're doing it, to keep people interested. You know, that's building audience is really, really important, you know, and wanting to keep people engaged with your work, again, because it's social. I view the work that I do as a social act. It's a conversation, and I want people to engage. You know, we create work so that it's seen. You know, we create work because we have to, but we also, especially when you're creating work with a message, you want to be able to have people see that. So that has created a lot of you know, opportunities for me where people are interested in what I'm doing and they're willing to come and talk to me about my work, and then they're able to put that on you know, in newspapers, in their own publications, and those networks are really, really important to maintain as well. You know, to reach out to people when you're doing stuff, things as, you know, simple as a press release, letting people who may not know what you're doing know about what you're doing because you think it's important. You know, and when they're documenting what you're doing, you use that as leveraging to get your message across. And when you're doing work that is very rooted in community and social justice, those messages are important because we need more people who have something to say to be heard. And if we're able to sort of curate that message of social justice and things that matter, we're reaching more people.
And it's important to continue that conversation. And back in the day before the internet, you had to do the same thing, right? You had to show up at different places, at different events, get seen, get known. That's still very much needed. but also now the extension is the online, right? And you have to keep that conversation going.
Yeah.
So today we broke down some amazing pieces of insight from Bobby LeFebre, who is a super talented artist. He was able to break down 3 key points. If you're a freelancer, a consultant, and an independent artist, or if you're like Bobby, you're all 3, right? You have to have 3 key components in your arsenal, okay? So let's review. You have to define yourself. You have to make sure you have your identity, right? Kind of like your fingerprint.
Yeah,
you know?
define who you are. You know, define who that is. Enhance your own abilities and strengths to really share that with people.
So then second is create a community. Now that you've developed yourself, you're an awesome writer or an actor, musician, freelancer of any sort, now you need to create the community.
Yeah, creating community is really important because, again, art is a conversation, and without people to engage, you're really just you know, engaging yourself in your own sort of ego. So community is really, really important to build.
Definitely. Having community is key so that you can now create consistency for longevity, right?
Yeah, consistency is really, for me, what I look forward to. Longevity and being able to be around, adjusting what I'm doing to meet new demands, and really being in it for the long haul. You know, I don't want to be the one-hit wonder. I want to be the person that is always delivering high quality work and building, you know, new, genuine relationships with people about things that matter.
And that's super important. It's super important to really have these key components in your arsenal so that you could actually find success. He's a very successful artist who has found his way, his voice, and it's very important that you take this information to heart. So now that you've been able to break down this information, if people want to stay in contact with you and follow you, how can they stay up with you?
You know, I'm on all the social media platforms, so Facebook, Bobby LeFebre, Instagram, Bobby LeFebre, Twitter, Bobby LeFebre. Again, that messaging, right? That consistency in even social media platforms is really, really important. BobbyLeFebre.com. You can check me out online. Also, with the web series I'm working on right now, Welcome to the North Side is the you know, the name that we're going by on social media, YouTube, Facebook. So check us out there. I also run a neighborhood blog called We Are North Denver, which is really you know, taking a look at the phenomenon of gentrification and how that's affected the North Denver neighborhood. So utilizing that platform as a conversation starter too. But yeah, Google me or check me out online in any way. Yeah, I'd be willing to engage with anyone.
Awesome. Definitely, you need to stay up with him. He has the Welcome to the North Side is a great series that you have to check out. It was spawned from a lot of your work in the community, and that came from We Are North Denver as well. And that was a great platform. I was able to film some content for him and help build some of the platform, and it definitely has worked. And we employed all the 3 facets that we talked about today. So, Bobby, thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of Around the Block Talk.
Thanks for the invite.
I'm looking forward to the next episode of Welcome to the North Side.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. We've been having fun.
It's going to be great. If you like this video and found value, please like and share, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get more marketing advice that works. I'm your host, Los, and until next time, we'll see you on the next episode of Around the Block Talk.